welcome to another video tutorial from the LENSEC team on the features from within Perspective VMS. My name is Jeff Kellick, and in today's session, we're going to focus on an administration/automation feature called workflows. Workflows allow you to work within Perspective VMS to take different triggers and create action outputs. Without any further ado, let's take a look at the software directly. We're going to navigate to workflows by using the administration module. You will need the administration module to access, design, and create workflows. However, it should be noted, not all users will require administration access to take advantage of the effects or outputs of that workflow action. Inside of the administration module, you're going to navigate to the workflows container and the workflows item within that container. In today's session, we're going to add a new workflow from scratch. As with most items inside of administration, we start with the basic information tab. This is where you can give the workflow a name. We'll call this one training workflow. The description area is a reference point for future users and administration personnel. It allows them to understand what the workflow is designed for. Therefore, you may want to be descriptive or verbose in your writing of that workflow design to help future users. Finally, on the basic information tab is the enable checkbox. Workflows will not run unless they are enabled. You're able to create workflows in advance before you turn them on, but when you want workflows to operate, you will need to select the enable checkbox. Let's go and take a look at the action or the trigger items for initiating a workflow. We'll start with the action button. The action button is a soft button that is warehoused on the side panel of Perspective VMS and is enabled for groups or users within Perspective VMS. This action button would act as a trigger to kick off a workflow. There is a separate option to notify the user that a workflow has been initiated upon that action button click. This gives the user that response to let them know that their click was successful. When you've selected a trigger item, you will click the Add button to drop it down to the list of trigger items. You may have multiple triggering items or events to kick off a workflow. Let's look at some of the other types. You may select an analytic event, a server-based analytic event such as intrusion detection, license plate recognition, facial recognition, etc. Based on the analytics that are installed on your system, this list will populate with all of those choices. In this case, we have an intrusion analytic that is set up on this particular system, showing an intrusion area and an intrusion gate. We can add this as one of our triggers. When you have multiple triggers that are added, it is an either-or function. Any of those items will trigger the workflow. So if you get the action button in this case or the intrusion analytic, either of those items will trigger the workflow. Another one is @logon. You can select any user that logs on or a specific user or group. So we could set up a workflow when I myself logged into the system. You can also set this trigger to be on an invalid login attempt. This may be wise if you have some users that you have fear that their login is being compromised. An additional one is a camera input trigger. On selected cameras, you can use the I/O functionality. If the I/O functionality is designed on the cameras, they will populate in this list. You can also use a camera event. By selecting the camera, you can select the events of that camera. The camera status change, maybe it goes offline or online, or you have a motion alert, whether it's server-based or edge-based, that could be a trigger for an action. Additionally, there are options for device events, such as access control doors. In this case, we'll choose the kitchen door. And if we have a valid access, invalid access control, or other options that are designed for that reader, you would use that as a trigger. Also have the option to set up a trigger at a specific time. This is great for running pre-designed reports, which, as you'll see, is another output function. Occasionally, you will have end users that will want a status report sent every day at 2 p.m. By setting up a trigger at a specific time, you can create the action output to run and generate that report and send it via email. You can also use a virtual input when you daisy chain different workflows together. We'll touch on this again on the action side when we show a virtual output. Once you've selected your trigger or triggers, you will go to the Action tab, which is the next in the list. These are all of the output actions that can happen within Perspective VMS. We'll start with archive configuration. Perspective VMS is a video management software. Therefore, it makes sense for triggers to start an action item, such as changing the archive configuration. Maybe based on a trigger, you want a selected camera to change its archiving codec or frame rate. So here we may change this break room camera to go to 15 frames a second based on that trigger event happening. You can also tell it when to stop recording on that frame rate, as well as define the priority of that frame rate recording. If there are other trigger events that happen, this one may be a higher priority, therefore keeping it at the 15 frame per second rate. Another option is an audible alert. This audible alert would happen at the workstations for a user or group of users based on this trigger. The audio file would be selected from a list of files within the system, such as a ding. You also have the option to generate how many times that item would repeat. We talked about camera inputs as a trigger. You can also leverage camera outputs. These outputs can then be wired to other external devices to create a more building automation or program logic control action. Similarly, you have this functionality with device actions. For example, on the main entrance, we could lock or unlock a door based on a trigger event happening. Trigger event that we showed earlier may be some form of video analytic that you would want tied to a door device. One of the most popular actions is email notification, and you can email to a user or an entire group of users, as well as additional recipients outside of the Perspective VMS group. You can define the importance of that video, the priority. You can fill out the specific subject line and body text of that email that would be sent. Here you can see you can append different types of status reports to send to those users. As mentioned before, as a time trigger, you may want every Thursday at 3 o'clock to send a status report to a group of administrators or board of directors. You can select, once selecting that report, you can select the export type, whether it's in PDF or Excel format. If your triggering action is a camera, you have the option to include a snapshot with that attachment or the archive link itself. Another option is changing a PTZ preset, moving a PTZ to a select preset. So here we'll take the back office PTZ and we can select the presets that are pre-configured for that office. So if we want on this trigger to move that PTZ to look at the award shelf, we can add that as a trigger item. As with any of these action items, similar to what we did with triggers, when you have that option selected, you will click the Add button. Another option is to create a real-time extraction. Real-time extractions allow you to take video clip recordings and automatically create an extraction file that is separate of the archiving data. This file will be retained indefinitely, creating a scenario where you don't have to go back to the video and interrogate, but rather based on that triggering event, such as an analytic, it would automatically wrap and create that extraction for you that you could download at a later time. Another very popular output of action of a workflow is changing the user interface. If we have a motion alert, a video analytic alert, and you want to notify all of the operators, you can change their user interface of everybody in that operators group or security guard group or administrative group and move them to a specific module, such as the camera viewer, and design a specific view, whether that is a sequence or a static view. The workflow allows you to even design that view on the fly. So if we want to look at a specific view showing the front office, the conference room, and the break room, you can design that output at once. You can define how long that view will stay on that user's workstation. And you have the option to prompt that user before navigation. This is important because if some users are working in a specific frame of mind, such as archives or inside of administration, they may not want to be taken out of their work and moved to the camera viewer. So prompting them allows them to decide if they want to change their view. If you are sending it to a security operations center, for example, you may want to deselect the prompt and just have it automatically change their view for them. As you can see, we can add multiple items to the actions. This is an anding feature, meaning that when this workflow kicks off, all of these actions will take place. It will change the PTZ preset, and it will change the user interface in this instance. Lastly, the last action output option is the virtual output. This allows you to daisy chain workflows together. This ties with the virtual input that we saw on the triggers tab. Once you've selected your actions along with your triggers, you will go to conditions. You are able to select a schedule as to when this workflow would be active. Most users will select always, but you can create custom schedules for your workflows. If your schedule is not already populated in the administration options list, you have the option by selecting the plus sign to create a new schedule on the fly. For more information on defining schedules, please check out our schedules tutorial on our webpage. Finally, you will have the option for settings. This allows for you to create a withholding time, often called a debounce window, from when you won't execute the next workflow. Sometimes if your trigger is a contact from an access control point, you may want to allow for a little bit of time between workflows initiating. You also have the option to allow the workflow to be run on demand. When the workflow is run on demand, you will see an icon appear next to the workflow that allows you to initiate that as an administrator. All workflows will run and generate a history, which you can pull up in a history report showing when they were created, when they were modified, and when they were last executed. Thank you for watching this tutorial on creating workflows. Workflows give you a lot of action and power capabilities within the system. We hope you take advantage of workflows and design workflows that help automate your personnel. For more questions, please check out our website at lensec.com/tutorials for other tutorials that you can see, or contact our support team and help designing a custom workflow for your solution.